Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we all want a faith that's actually real, one that lasts. But how do you build it? Today, we're going to go back to the source, to the Apostle Paul's letters, to unpack a really practical four-step model for a faith that doesn't just survive, but truly thrives.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. The Apostle Paul points to this one church in ancient Greece in a city called Thessalonica, and he basically says, look at them, that's how it's done. So you have to ask, what made their faith so incredible that it became the gold standard for an entire region?
Well, to get to the bottom of their secret, we're going to walk through Paul's four-step process. First, we'll look at the foundation, the source material itself. Then, we'll see why having guides is so important. After that, we'll get into the crucial role of community. And finally, we'll talk about how to actually apply all of this in our own lives.
So what was their secret sauce? I mean, think about it. How does a small group of brand new believers in a pretty hostile city develop a faith so authentic that it just spreads like wildfire without Paul even being there to manage it? The answer is in how they understood what faith even is.
In this slide, this really gets to the heart of it. So often today, maybe after an amazing sermon or a powerful youth retreat, we can treat faith as a one-time decision, a box we've ticked. But Paul's model? It's totally different. For him and the Thessalonians, faith wasn't a single event. It was the start of a process. It wasn't just some private, individual choice, but a life-shaping journey you take with other people, a process of being constantly nurtured and established.
So this establishing process that Paul talks about, it really rests on these four essential pillars you see right here. It's about grounding yourself in the source, learning from trusted guides, engaging with a real community, and then, of course, putting it all into practice. It sounds simple, but wow, is it powerful. Let's break them down.
Okay, so the starting point, the absolute non-negotiable, is the source material. Your foundation has to be solid rock, not, shifting sand.
And this right here, this quote, is the key. The Thessalonians didn't just hear Paul's message as some good advice or an interesting philosophy, they accepted it as the actual word of God. This wasn't just another idea to consider, it was the ultimate authority that was going to redefine everything else in their lives.
But here's the thing. You're not just handed this new authority and told, good luck, figure it out on your own. Nope. This journey requires guides who actually know the terrain.
I love how Paul describes his role. He talks about being like a mother and a father, gently nurturing, but also firmly encouraging and instructing. He knew that a new faith is like a newborn baby. It needs constant care and protection to grow up strong and not get sidetracked by all the other competing ideas out there.
And since Pablo couldn't be there forever, he set up local leaders. He told the church, hey, listen to these folks, learn from them. And let's be clear, this isn't about blind obedience. It's about respecting the wisdom God provides through the people he's put in place to guide and protect the community. All right, this is where the process gets really real. It moves from being something you just hear from a pulpit to something you actually engage with, wrestle with, and internalize with other people.
This is so much more than a quick hello and a handshake after the Sunday service. This is about being in a community where you can warn someone who's going off track, comfort someone who's really struggling, and genuinely help each other out. It's in these honest, sometimes messy conversations that our faith really gets hammered into shape.
And let's be real for a second. This is a huge challenge, isn't it? In a massive city like Bangalore, it is so easy to feel completely anonymous, even in a packed church. But Paul's model says this is essential. Finding that small group, that circle of trust where you can get past the surface-level talk about traffic and work into real life-on-life discussion, well, that's absolutely vital. That's where faith stops being just a theory.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important step. Because at the end of the day, all the studying, all the guidance, all the great discussions, they don't mean much if they don't actually change how we live. This is the ultimate so what question for every single one of us here in Bangalore. If my faith doesn't change how I handle the insane traffic on the ORR, how I act at my job, how I deal with my family, or how I spend my money, is it even real? The goal isn't just to have correct beliefs in our heads, but to have a transformed life that actually points people to God.
Yeah, this is faith with its sleeves rolled up. For the Thessalonians, it meant turning away from literal stone idols. For us, our idols might look a little different. Maybe it's the idol of a career, choosing integrity on a big project when nobody's watching. It means navigating those complicated family expectations around marriage or career with a whole new sense of grace and conviction. It means our faith becomes visible in how we treat the poor and how we live our lives Monday through Saturday.
So, what happens when a whole community actually commits to this four-part process? What's the result? Is it a perfect problem-free life? Well, not exactly.
I just love this phrase. And get this, Paul writes this while the Thessalonians are facing intense suffering and persecution. But their faith isn't just surviving. It's not just hanging on by a thread. He says it's growing marvelously. This process doesn't get rid of problems, but it builds a faith that can actually thrive right in the middle of them.
So here it is in a nutshell. But remember, this isn't just a checklist. It's a living system, a cycle of growth. We anchor ourselves in the Word, but we need wise guides to help us understand it. We discuss it in community to sharpen our thinking, and then we apply it to our lives, which, guess what? It sends us right back to the source for more.
Look, a faith that lasts isn't built in a day. It's built by small, intentional choices, day after day. You don't have to master all four of these things at once. Just look at them again. Study, consult, discuss, apply. The only question that really matters right now is, what's your next step?